And
Hi, District Attorney Rosen. Thank you
Hi,
so. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, council member?
I'm doing well, all things considered.
Good.
How's your family doing?
They're good. My wife is a judge, and so she's actually been conducting her hearings from home, from our house, doing them remotely from our home office.
Right.
Our, so that's been nice. And our two daughters have been home from college the last few months, and they finished their classes for the semester online, and it's they're doing well. It's an adjustment for everybody.
No, I'm sure. Thank you so much for joining us on such short notice. We really appreciate you making the time. We can only imagine how busy you are. As you know, I am the Legislative Action Committee Chair for the Cities Association of Santa Clara County, so all 15 cities. And one of the issues our members are interested in is this new criminal sentencing, parole, and DNA collection initiative that will be on the November 2020 ballot. We've gotten a lot of questions, and so we thought it would be appropriate and very helpful to have you, as our DA, just answer a couple questions and hopefully provide some of the answers our members have been asking for. So I will start by asking you to briefly describe what this initiative is that will be on the November 2020 ballot.
Well, it does a number of things, but one of the things it does is expands the DNA collection of evidence for more offenses. So currently, essentially for felonies, we can collect someone's DNA for committing a felony. For misdemeanors, essentially, we can't. This would allow for DNA collection for some misdemeanors, not all misdemeanors, but some misdemeanors. I think that's the main thing it does. If this is the initiative I'm thinking of, because there's a number on the ballot, it also it may modify some other things that Prop 47 did in terms of raising the limit on theft from $400 to $950, making $950 the line at which something becomes a felony, as opposed to $400 or $450 as it was before. So I think that's a second significant change. And yeah, that's what I'm aware of. I mean, one thing I would just say to your association is, while this is an important initiative, and we can talk about the pros and cons of it, I don't know if it's the most important initiative related to criminal justice that's on the ballot. There's a second initiative to stop bail reform, and I think that's a more important initiative for the cities to be aware of. That's an initiative that would continue the practice we have of cash bail and would overturn a Senate bill in our state legislature that was passed about a year and a half ago, which was getting rid of cash bail and essentially having judges decide, with the help of data and different kinds of algorithmic tools, allowing judges to say, is this person safe to release? If they are, let's release them with conditions, perhaps, of electronic monitoring, or let's release them while we're waiting for trial. If they're too dangerous to release, and that's a small number of people, but if they're too dangerous, then they're going to be held in custody before trial. And we never talk about bail, which I think is a very imperfect tool that punishes poor people and allows wealthy people, who are sometimes quite dangerous, particularly when we're talking about domestic violence, allows them to be out. So maybe at the end of this, we'll have a chance to chat a little bit about that. I think that's an important issue for your association as well.
District Attorney Rosen, I appreciate you bringing up that initiative as well. And as I go through the questions, I will have you answer them based on both initiatives. We have limited time, so maybe hopefully we can cover both. And I agree with you, during the COVID crisis, as you know, the domestic violence cases have gone up.
Yes.
Significantly impacted our community. And so the next question, I want to be clear for everybody. Have you endorsed either of these initiatives?
The initiative related to DNA and altering other things about Prop 47, I have not endorsed it. I haven't taken a public position on it yet. I may, but I would say, in terms of informing the cities about what my thinking is, I support expanded DNA testing in almost all forms, because from a criminal justice perspective, it helps us to solve a lot of crimes. So it may be that we solve a very serious crime because we collected someone's DNA, even though it was only a misdemeanor that that person committed. So when it comes to collecting more DNA, I've seen over and over again how it's very helpful in terms of solving crimes. In terms of, so that's a piece of it, this initiative that I support. In terms of rolling back some of the things that Prop 47 did, for instance, rolling back the dollar amount to make it a lot easier to charge felonies for small dollar thefts, I don't support that. Part of why I supported Prop 47 is that I thought that we were labeling people as felons for activity that, while criminal, was not so serious as to be a felony. And the reason that that's an important distinction is a misdemeanor conviction is easier to get expunged from your record after you complete probation, and can be done very quickly, particularly in our county. But a felony is a lot more difficult. And a felony is almost like a scarlet letter that follows you for many, many years. And I'm a big believer, of course, as your DA, in holding people accountable when they break the rules. But after they have, we used to say you paid your debt to society after you served your sentence. Then as your DA, I want to do everything I can to help that person reintegrate back into society. And a felony conviction makes that very difficult. So that you can see, that's probably why I don't know that I'm going to support or oppose this initiative, because there's things about it that I agree with, there's things about it I don't, and so I'm happy to talk to you about what I like or don't like about it. But I think that by and large, Prop 47 was a good policy change. I was involved in writing it and supporting it, so it's not a surprise I think that. But I think that it was important in trying to be a little bit more thoughtful and careful about who we're calling a felon, because while I'm a prosecutor, that doesn't mean I think prosecution or felonies is the answer to every problem in our community. So, I'm for more DNA testing. I'm not for filing more felonies for low-level thefts.
No, thanks. And that's a very important distinction. And I should have said at the beginning, as you know, the Cities Association consists of the 15 different cities, but we're all independent bodies. And sometimes we do take a position to endorse or oppose an initiative.
Sure.
I don't think there's been a proposal for us to do that. And so I feel more like a reporter where I'm doing information gathering. I am not taking a position either way. It's really to get exactly what you're providing. Information to give to our members so that they have enough information to move forward. On the bail reform initiative, have you endorsed that initiative?
Absolutely not. I'm against. Well, I'm for the original bail reform.
You're for the original.
Right. I'm for. I helped to write Senate Bill 10 with State Senator Robert Hertzberg from Los Angeles. I lobbied to get it passed. I testified about it. I support getting rid of cash bail and moving to a system where there's a pretrial services department that provides information to a judge. Prosecutor and defense attorney argue before the judge about whether the person is safe to release. Ultimately, the judge makes that decision, and that decision shouldn't have anything to do with money. So that didn't make me very popular with the bail bonds industry, and so they have put this initiative on the ballot to overrule Senate Bill 10 and keep the current system we have in our state, which is cash bail. And so I think what the Cities Association should know is that we're very fortunate in Santa Clara County. We are the only county in the state that has had a pretrial services department which monitors individuals while they're awaiting trial if they are out of custody. You can think of it as like a probation department. Probation department monitors people after they've been convicted of a crime and serve their sentence, and then they're on probation for a period. Pretrial services is monitoring a person who's been charged with the crime, not yet convicted, they're out of custody, and during the period that they're out of custody, a pretrial services officer may check in to make sure the person is not violating any terms of their release, like going to bars or going to certain areas or bothering certain people they're not supposed to be near. So we've been very fortunate in our county to have this department for 30 or 40 years. And even in our county, where the elected DA does not like bail, does not want to use bail, because Senate Bill 10 has not been allowed to become law yet, there are still situations where people are able to get, let me put it this way, where people are able to get out of custody because they can post bail. Dangerous people that should not be allowed to be out, but they can make a $200,000 bail. I mean, if you've got a house, or your brother or sister or mom has a house or a condo in Santa Clara County, you've got the equity, or you can put that up to get out for even a very high bail. I would say in terms of people that are poor, our philosophy is if we think you can be out of custody, then we're not asking for bail. We're asking for you to either be out with no conditions, or that you can be out, but you should be on some kind of electronic monitoring, or there should be certain conditions, but those conditions aren't money. So we're trying very much to use bail as little as possible in our county, and I will be actively campaigning to defeat the initiative that the bail bonds industry has put on the ballot. And we'll see. You know, I don't know what the voters are going to do. It depends on how the issue is framed. If people think either there's bail or there's nothing, then they probably say we should have bail. If they understand that there's other ways to monitor somebody that don't have to do with bail, then they'll probably say we don't need bail. So I think that'll be a fight that we have in November, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to actually go out and talk to people in person about that. But it could be a Zoom campaign, so we'll see.
Thanks. Along the lines of Santa Clara County being the only county that has an Office of Pretrial Services, is there any work being done to get other counties to have such an office? Because I do think it goes hand in hand with your position. And again, I'm not going to say whether or not I personally support what you're saying, but I think when you think about it, I think that would help and contribute to the process if you do have that office to monitor individuals if they're out on.
I think that's an excellent point. The bill that was passed, Senate Bill 10, provides for funding for counties to start an Office of Pretrial Services. So the bill not only gets rid of cash bail, but it requires counties to have an Office of Pretrial Services, and it provides funding for that. Now, as always, what the state will provide is less than what the county will want. Yes, but the state says it will provide some amount of funding. Right. Counties would probably need to augment it. You know, one of the things for our county is we've always had this Office of Pretrial Services, so I would like us, we'll certainly advocate to be reimbursed for at least some, if not all of the expenses of having our pretrial services department. But yes, I think that it's necessary to have such a department in order to make this work. The other thing that I would just say about bail is that while I'm a great believer in in free market capitalism, and that is, really helped our democracy to grow and to thrive. I don't think that capitalism is the answer, or that the profit motive is the answer for every problem in our society. So, to try to build a better iPhone, a better computer, a profit motive certainly seems like a way to try to get companies to do that. But in terms of deciding who should be in or out of custody, and having a bail bonds company which has a financial interest in this, I don't think that's the right answer. And I also, as your DA, we have a terrific police departments in our county. The police officers are very highly trained and well educated in our county, and I am comfortable with them using force when it's necessary in order to apprehend dangerous people. Bail bonds agents are not police officers, and so to have private citizens running around with guns to bring other people into custody, I think is very dangerous, and not the right role of who should be allowed to use force in our society.
You can see my daughter in the background picking up something from the printer. Thanks for that, District Attorney Rosen. And just to follow up on that, we're talking about what the cities should be aware of. And I prepared this question specific to the criminal sentencing and DNA collection initiative, but I think it ties in also with the bail reform initiative, in that what do you think cities should be aware of, start preparing for in the event either both of these initiatives pass in November? And with the criminal sentencing, one thing that kept coming up in my research was the impact on our local law enforcement, their resources and costs, if some of the sentencing laws will change, how that will impact their resources. And I was also curious, the DA's office staffing, how will this impact your staff if the criminal sentencing initiative passes?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. It's very hard for me to assess whether whether we would need more resources or fewer resources depending on whether either of these initiatives passed or didn't. I frankly think, from the perspective of the DA's office, I don't believe that this would require more resources from our office in order to enforce these laws if they're changed. From the perspective of the police department, obviously the police chiefs are in a better position to answer that for me, but I'm not sure how that would affect the bottom line of the police departments. The DNA collecting, expanding the use of DNA collecting means that someone will need to collect the DNA. Usually that's not the police officer it's not the police officer that collects the DNA. It's when the person's booked into jail or brought to the jail to determine whether to book them. Generally it's done there. That's a county official that does that. It may be that the costs of the DNA analysis are then put back on the city from where that person was arrested. That's possible. See, there's certain costs that the police departments bear for using different county resources. So, right, I run the crime laboratory for the county. It serves all of the jurisdictions in the county, all of the different cities. They get a bill each year from the crime lab for services that we've done for that city. So it's possible that expanding the use of DNA would have a financial cost to the cities. That's certainly possible that cost would be passed on from the county to the city. I think it's a good cost. I think it will solve a lot of crimes, but that is a potential cost. In terms of the bail, I don't think that would have a significant effect one way or another on the cities. And I should just say, where you draw the line on a felony, whether that's for stealing something that
there'll be an increase in the number of bail bond.
Right. There may be more bail. They might be writing more bail bonds if there's more felonies. But but I'm not sure how that would affect the police department's enforcement. I've had a lot of conversations about this issue of the thefts with the police chiefs. And one of the conversations we've had is, look, are you trying to tell me that because it's now because this kind of theft is now a misdemeanor versus a felony, now your officers aren't going to investigate it? Like, either it's an important priority and you're going to investigate these cases, or you're not. I would say to them, please explain to me why, whether there's an M for a misdemeanor or an F for a felony at the end of this penal code section, affects whether or not you're going to enforce it, or whether or not you're going to devote whether or not you're going to devote the resources towards it. So I said, and they would, and whatever, we had some frank discussions. Because I'd say, like, if you didn't have the resources to investigate these kinds of thefts before, when it was a felony, then you didn't have the resources to investigate a lot of them. I mean, that's not Los Altos. I mean, that's not most of the cities, or either you had the resources or you didn't. It doesn't matter what you call it. And right. Sometimes when the police chiefs would say, well, but if it's a misdemeanor, it's only worth this many days in jail and not that many, and therefore it's not worth our time. I said, pardon me, which usually is an indication you're about to say something that you want to be pardoned for.
With all due respect.
With all due respect, I didn't realize that your job, my job isn't to get the most number of months in jail or the most number of years in prison. My job's to do justice. I didn't realize that your job was to try to arrest people for the most serious offense that you can think of. Like, your job's to try to enforce the law fairly. My job's to try to enforce it fairly. It seems like if the citizens of our community think that this is more like a misdemeanor than a felony, so be it. I mean, when the 3 strikes law passed 20 years ago and increased dramatically the sentences for a lot of the same offenses, and I said this, police chiefs, did you have a problem enforcing it? Did you say, oh no, I don't want to enforce that now because they're going to get too much time? So if you didn't have a problem enforcing something that increased the amount of time, then you shouldn't have a problem enforcing something that gives someone less time in custody, because that our job is we don't write the law in the executive branch, in the police departments, in the DA's office. We try to enforce it in a fair way. So if the citizens think that this crime is a misdemeanor, we're going to vigorously enforce it as a misdemeanor. And if they think it's a felony, we're going to vigorously enforce it as a felony. That's how we see our role.
The vigorous enforcement will remain the same.
Yes.
Unfortunately, District Attorney Rosen, we're at time.
Okay.
This has been great. I wish we could do a part 2. I do want to recognize all the work your office, along with the county and all the cities. I mean, it's really wonderful to see the collaboration during this time. So thank you for all you're doing. Really appreciate it. And thanks.
You're very welcome.
For us. Thanks, Andy, for scheduling.
Thank you. And I look forward to running into you in Los Altos. We're neighbors, but we haven't run into each other there yet. So.
I know. When people ask if anybody famous lives in Los Altos, I'm thinking of you, but I don't say anything. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.